Hi guys, and welcome back here to the Dev Realm. And today we're gonna be carrying on our series, and we are carrying on our MMORPG framework. And if you guys remember, what we did here on our last episode is that we have now created a main menu. And now, if I play here as a standalone, I can load the play button. I can create a new character, can edit, can delete. But if I press play, I can play with my character. Now, the problem that I want to solve here today is that I want to basically create an instance of a server, because what happened is that we right now have the client. That's where the user plays and interacts with the game. But then we have the server side, which is the part that validates all the requests. So we need now to start to update that. The problem now that we have is that if I play as a server, because we're going to need a server when we're playing MMO, you're going to need at least one server to host your game. And now if you press play, first of all, you're going to have an issue, on the test mode. Imagine that you load the player data. Now we are going to have a problem because right now we are trying to access things that doesn't exist. We're trying to read files that they can't replicate. And at the moment, it's a little bit of a mess. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do here, so I'm going to open up wherever this thing is throwing error. So if I open up here the MMO gameplay, right? Now, what I can do here is that instead of doing this get gameplay instance and do all sorts here, I'm going to unconnect this, right? I'm going to compile and save this. And I'm going to move this inside the player controller, all right? So if you guys remember, on here where we have our player, we also have our player controller, all right? And here is very important because our player controller it serves both the server and serves the client. We need to make sure that they are communicating between them, all right? So what we're gonna do here is that we need to basically trigger a couple of events and things based on the server that replicates on the client, all right? So the very first thing I want to do here is that when the event start, right? When I start this, I want to get controlled home, all right? This, you guys remember, it returns us the instance of our character here. It will return this little guy there, all right? Anyway, we're going to compile and save. And here I am going to cast to BP base, which one is the one I use? BP base player. There you go. I'm going to cast to that. And I'm going to put it right here. And there we go. Now, in here, you may argue that we could use an interface or we could use, anyway, like a different way of doing that. But the problem is that we need this variable to run. We need this to happen when we start the game. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just use the cast. All right. All right. So now that we have done this, I'm going to promote that to a variable called the player palm ref. All right. Now that I have my player palm ref, I want to make sure that you create it as a public variable. And now right here, there's an option called expose on spawn. Sure, let's expose that on spawn. Actually, maybe not. We don't need that, sorry. Now, the replication, make sure that is replicated, all right? So here's where things get very complicated when we're trying to interact with MMO. Your client is also a server. So in essence, we are trying to handle events that runs both on clients and server. A client is what you interact with, and a server is what receives the information. So let's say when you kill a boss, right, you get experience points. So when you get experience points, that logic happen on the server. So we save that data. But when you have the animation of the boss dying, that happens on the client. So it's a concept that we need to keep working together. We're gonna find a lot of problems that we need to figure out as we go, but let's keep things simple right now, right? Now, Now that I have this stuff, which is good, I can go back in here. And basically, I'm just going to do a print. And I would like to print this name. And I'm going to change this color to blue. And let's see what is going to happen. So if I press play here, right, as a client, I should have that both on the server. So I only have that on the client. Okay. Now we have a problem, guys, because the problem that we have here is that I also want to have the reference of that thing on the player. And I'm also having problems on this add mapping thing here because we are like receive event controller changed. Yeah, we are basically having problems on that. Right. The first problem that we have here is that basically the server is complaining that it doesn't have the reference of this guy when it's trying to add the mapping, right? Well, we don't really need the mapping reference when we're trying to play because, for example, I want to be able to move freely, right? So let me double check if what we could do here. Let me just double check if I do on begin play get controller. If I do it right this, let me double check if the arrow goes away. So that arrow, it looks fine. Now, one thing that we need to figure out on the player, remember that we have that it's a creation mode. We just need to disable that so we can play with the character. Nice. So now we should have ability to play with the character. I just want to try one thing here. Instead of doing this, we could leave it like when the event has been changed, which makes more sense. Now that basically, guys, this event that you can see here right on the screen here happened when you press play, and then the game controller sends an event to our palm and say, "Oh, please, can you update this controller?" And that's what happened. All right. I mean, previously you would do that on the event begin, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Whatever you do, as long as you do it, right? Now that should work, but now we should have an error. And that error is happening because we need to run this on the client. And that's where things get very complicated, but let's go slow by slow. And I'm conscious about making the lessons very slow, but also it will help us to understand where we're finding the problems. But anyway, so now what we're going to do here is that we're going to create here is server, right? And if is the server running, we're going to create a branch. And in this case, if we are not running on the server, then we're going to do this stuff. And now if I press play, I should be able to move anyway because I'm still playing as a client. But now I don't have the error anymore. And that's good. That's everything that I wanted to do right here. So everything is done. Now, next problem we need to do right here, right? So we need to figure out this variable. So if we check it up, we have client, right? I want to make sure that I set my player palm reference both on the server and on the client, because then I can use the variable to do whatever I want, change the player color, change the player, whatever. I just need to keep that on the server. All right. So to do that, it's very easy to do. So on Unreal Engine has a very handy events for us. And this is something that I introduced you guys a little bit, but let's do it properly. Right. So I'm going to first copy this stuff, right? And I am going to create a new event graph. And this event graph I'm going to call multicast. All right. Or let's say, yeah, multicast. I'll leave it as just called as multicast. That's probably not a good name. Anyway, I'll just go player start or player palm events. Right. Now I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna create a custom event, and I'm gonna call this API set player base ref, right? Or player palm ref. Right. This, pay attention to this, right? We are going to run this event on the client, all right? And make sure it's reliable. So that's the first thing you're going to run is going to be on the client. So the client will tell the server which one is the POM, all right? Now I'm going to paste the stuff here. I'm going to plug it right there. That's fine. Now we already have the server set up. Now, sorry, the client. Now what I need to do here is that I can just do a print, all right? I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back to my event graph. And on the event beginning, I'm just going to paste this stuff right here. Now, when I press play, I should have client, all right? Client say hello. Great. That means that stuff is running on the client. Now, I need to also run that on the server. Now, I could change here to run multicast, right? Which means it will replicate on both. And let's see if is that going to work. In some cases, that doesn't work. As you can see, it only runs on the client. No problem. Let's go back here and make sure it runs on your own client. And now I am going to create another function. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it right here. Right? And I'm going to call this server. Right? Same name. I'm just going to append the server first. Now I am going to have the server. I'm going to do a print. And if we run this correctly, the server should be in a purple color. Right? Gonna put it right there. We're gonna compile and save this stuff and press play. Now, server say hello. And that's very nice because what happened now is that our client is saying, hey server, I want to tell you something. All right. Now I'm gonna just plug this thing here. I'm gonna leave it right there. I'm gonna make sure that I can set my player POM reference right this. All right. And now this, oh, sorry, I forgot. What I did here, let me just revert that. I wasn't recording the screen. What happened here is that we are calling this player POM reference. Now we go back here to the player POM server. And what I'm doing here is that I'm going to drag and drop the player POM reference right there. And I'm just going to do it like this. And that's it. That's all you got to do. And that thing will already work for us. But I want to make sure that that thing is working. I want to make sure that the player, both client and server, they have the reference of the POM that we're trying to change, right? All right, so now all you got to do here, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste with the same name. I'm going to call multicast. Multicast, guys, means both on server and on the client. Make sure you mark as reliable, everything here, right? This one must be reliable. And I'm going to do a print. I do not need the player reference, but I want to get the player name here, right? I want to get the object name. Now I can call this from the server, and let's see what is going to happen. Right, now the server did not replicate that. There must be something wrong with that. And the problem is that we probably, let me double check. So we have here the player POM, we have all that stuff. Now we have the player setup. Let me just press play again. Now we need to make sure that the server knows the existence of the client. So what we have to do here now is that instead of doing this, I am just gonna delete that here. And I'm gonna set the player right here, player POM reference. But this time I'm going to pass it from the server, right? And now we should be able to set those values when we press play. And now I have, oh yeah, sorry, that's not coming because I need to pass the player POM reference. And in this way, both player and server, they are aware of the player. I think I just did a mistake. I may not need to run this again. Let me just double check. I could just do something like that. I can call the reference right here. And I can just do that. Let me see if this, and then in this way, I don't need to pass this reference right here. So in this way, it already set the reference and I don't need to worry about that. There we go, it works as well. So this way it works. Right now, you don't need to worry about this multicast. Let's just delete it and leave it like this. Make sure you have exactly like that, right? And I'm just gonna comment here saying start the player reference. All right, start the player pom ref. All right, good, nice. Now we have everything that we need here to start our logic. Right, okay, now I have another problem. Now, when you press play, you need to make sure that you transfer your local data to the server, which means that we need to tell the server to replicate that save game, whatever you have to, change the player parts and all sorts, right? So what we can do here, right, is that I'm just gonna change my scene. I'm gonna leave this open. I'm just gonna leave this on the side. I'm gonna go back to my levels. I'm gonna go to main menu, and I'm gonna press play and see what happened here. And let me see if I have any errors. I have an error. Let's double check. Where is that error? Right. This error is because we are running, once again, the whole client and server situation. Reality, you're gonna create a a server that only loads and start that session on that place for you. But because what's happening here is that we are trying to use the same client to start a server and a client and a server. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm just gonna do the same thing here. That is server, right? Or is replicated. Now let me just do. Has authority. Yes. So if it doesn't have authority, means it's a remote. I'll compile and save that. That means that I'm running on the client. And there you go. No more errors. Great. Now, what happens if I press to run on the server? I mean, that wouldn't be very smart to run this on the server, but I'm just maybe trying to, yeah, that wouldn't work. So what I could do here, anyway, I don't need to worry about the server at the moment. I can just worry about the client, because the client can start a server for me. The idea is that when you press play, it loads your character data on the scenario now, on the server, right? Now, okay, I know it's getting confused, but we have to do this in order to get all this stuff working properly on our replicated server. All right. Okay, so now we've done this stuff, and when I press play, I do have what is it? I do have, when I press play, no, that's the controller. Sorry, that's the wrong thing. When I press play here, I am loading up. That's it. When you press play, there is a play function here that open up the level. And of course, it gets your current widget and sets up the game instance, and then we pass the game instance, right? Now, one thing that we need to be aware is that the game instance, it runs locally. It doesn't run on the server. The only thing that runs on the server, I think, is the game mode and the player controller. I need to check, and also the POM as well. But so what we're doing here in essence is getting data from local and replicating it on the server, right? But we can do that by closing all this stuff here. I don't need all this stuff open. Let's close everything. Let's go back to the main menu. Let's go back to levels. And let's open up the test here. Right. Now, what I want to do here is, I may not need the test yet. Sorry, I don't need that level yet. I just need to open up the character. Oh my gosh, what is it here? Blueprints. I need to open up my player. And I need to open up here my game instance, main, play, and this one. That's what I need to open up. Right. Now, what I'm going to do here is that when we load, right, when we load this data, I'm going to create here a custom event. And we're going to call this API load player data. All right. This will run again from the client reliable. and I'm gonna copy and paste. I'm gonna call the same name. This is gonna then load on the server, all right? And now from the server, I'm gonna copy and paste. I'm gonna run here on the multicast. Right. Now we are gonna run this on the server. Must make sure it's reliable, and the same thing here. Make sure it is multicast. Make sure that's reliable. Right. Now, if you guys remember, we have our MMO gameplay here, right? Remember they were like doing all this crazy thing here? So basically what we need is that we need to copy that. We're gonna go back to our controller here. We're gonna paste it right there. Right. Now, I'm not gonna save all this stuff yet, all right? Now, from the MMO, we can delete this whole thing. Compile and save this stuff, we don't need it. Now, when you load from your client, you have your game instance, right? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get this, put it right there, do it this, and there you go. Now I have the game instance running. Crazy, nice. Now I'm gonna save this as the player game instance. Make sure it's reliable. I put it right there, okay? And now you guys probably have the idea what I'm gonna do with this, is that I am gonna load here the data. So I'm gonna get the player instance. It's gonna be set it right here. And from that, I'm gonna call this, which will pass it there. Now let's see, what do we have here? Let's see if the server register that as a valid, let's say, instance, right? So I'm gonna go back here in the event begin play. I'm gonna call that load player data, all right? Now if I press play, I should have, when I press play here, MMO framework, right? That is running on the client. But now what I would like to do here is, let me open up the levels test and let's press play. It should say something there. It doesn't say anything, so it's not passing the data properly. Let's check why. So it's running from my own client. I'm getting my game instance. Let me just do a print and see here if this value is being set. It's running on the client for sure. So the client is aware of that data, all right? Now, okay. So we are passing the game instance. One thing I forgot to do is that on the game instance, make sure it's replicated, right? If I press play here, I still don't have that data coming up. Maybe it's, let me double check replication conditions. Let me just do a print here. I may need to load the player data in a different way. But if I do it here, let me press play. Still don't have that data. Let me just double check because that's running right here. Let's press play and let's see what's going on. So I have on the client, but when it runs on the server, it's not doing that. Okay. Maybe what I can do here is that instead of doing that, right? Because the player instance only exists on the, yes, okay, I think I understand that. But what we need to do here is that then we need to get maybe the save object, all right? And on here, that needs to be a BP main player save object then. So BP main player save, right? And I am just gonna call this method. Put it right there, and let's see if that's gonna work. If that doesn't work, then we're gonna need to create a structure to load each individual data on the server as well. But that should be fine. The server doesn't like that. Well, let me try that now, just for fun, to send a string, right? I'm just gonna do it like that. Server Yeah, all right. So what's going on here, guys, is that I was trying to load the data in an easy way, like sending the whole game object to our game, right? To our server. But the problem with that is that I am not able to proper load this data. So what I have to do here is something a little bit annoying, but let's figure it out. Let's fix this. And then in the next lesson, we start to change the player appearance. But now what I need to do here is I need to get the player save object, all right? And then from here, I need to get, let's say, the player appearance, all right? Now, what I need to do here is that I am gonna set this to a variable called player appearance. That's fine. Make sure it's public. And the game instance, we just gonna leave it here, but it will only runs on the client, so it's fine. We don't care about it. Make sure that's replicated, right? Now, what we're gonna do here before we finish off our lesson, I'm gonna plug this one there. I'm gonna remove that. And what I'm gonna do here, that will set on the client, right? This will set on the server. So now the server, it's aware that we have appearance. And I can just literally, break this data and do maybe a print and maybe do something like that. But the important thing is that, let's see if that's gonna work. The server doesn't have that data. That is because the set player appearance. Yes, it's because we do not have a player save object, right? So in order to get this data, let's say, working right, okay, just for testing, what I'm gonna do here is that I am gonna go back to, let me check, where is the game? Unreal. So Unreal project MMO. I'm gonna go to the save game and save, and I know the prefix. I'm gonna use this first one here, right? Now I am gonna load, let's say here, just gonna leave it right there. I have the play, that's fine, right? This is for testing, okay? You don't need to do that necessarily, but I'm just gonna load, save, game from slot. I already know this slot. And I can basically do a print here just to test, to make sure that we have a valid slot, right? To make sure that we have the data. And that's running from the client, okay? We do have. Great. Now, ignore the error for now. Now, on the game instance, I'm just going to set player save object. I'm going to put this one. Oh, yeah. So I need to... Yeah, this is getting a little bit complicated now, but anyway, cast to BP main player save, and now I should be able to get this data. All right, what I'm trying to do here, guys, is that forcing my way into make the Unreal Engine believe that I am loading the data. I'm just simulating data here right now. Now that should work. Yes, good. That means that our server is aware of our player data. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause the video because this got extremely long. And then in the next lesson, I'm going to load the player information. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I see you guys in the next one.